What's going on, y'all? I'm Kay.
And I'm Kira.
And today we're going to be showing y'all our 2025 garden plan. Plus, we're going to be showing y'all what we're going to grow in the garden this year.
And along the way, we're going to give y'all a few justifications and some nuggets of information to explain to you all why we're making some of the decisions we're making in the garden this year. We got some changes and some additions to the garden, okay? And we're going to show y'all all those things further into the video. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
All right, y'all, as we go over this garden plan, you'll notice that we grow in a variety of ways. So we grow in ground, we grow in containers, we grow in raised beds, and then we grow vertically. So with that said, our first pit stop is going to be what we have affectionately named the turnip bed. It was, is, and will be
Forever.
Ever. Turnips growing in that bed. Why? Because my mom loves them.
She is deeply, deeply in love.
And so that's just what it's going to be. So in the past, what I've done is what I call the scatter method. When I am sowing seeds, I just scatter them around.
Blow them. That's what it is.
Hey. But this year, the plan is to be more intentional about the spacing.
And so we have another bed right beside that that's also an 8x4 that's full of garlic.
So we have 5 varieties growing in this bed. In the 2024 growing season, we had, in the summer, we had 1/2 of it garlic, and then the other half of it was eggplants. But because we love garlic so much and we use a lot of it, we decided to make the whole bed garlic.
Nothing but garlic.
So we planted 82 cloves and 81 came up.
Which is a pretty good track record with that. Like pretty much 99% came up. That's really, really good.
So. And if you didn't get a chance to see us plant that garlic, we do have a video where we showcase, it's kind of like it's a garlic haul. So we do have that, and we'll put that link in the description.
Now here is where one of the exciting parts comes in, y'all. Right next to the garlic bed, we're gonna have a new in-ground plot area where we're going to plant some cabbage, plenty of beets, lettuce, radish, and celeriac there, and some chives as well. Now that may seem like a lot in this 8x8 foot area that we're gonna have, but this is where we're going to use the method called companion planting.
To put it simply, companion planting is the technique of combining 2 plants for a particular purpose, usually pest control. However, there are other factors that play a role in how plants work together as companions. Many insects use their sense of smell to find their way to their favorite crops. One way to use companion planting to protect your plants is to mask their odors with other powerful smells such as garlic and onions. Then there's just some plants that attract certain pests. These plants can protect your crops by acting as a trap crop to lure pests away from your desired crops. This can make it easier to control pests since they're concentrated on a few plants. Now, all plants take nutrients from the soil. However, some plants return more nutrients than they take. For example, beans and leafy greens such as kale and lettuce would make great companions because beans add nitrogen in the soil and leafy greens thrive off of nitrogen. And lastly, some plants grow well together because they don't compete for the same light or nutrients. For example, onions are shallow rooted and the tap roots of carrots go straight down and deep. Each of these plants search for nutrients in different areas of the soil. So, consider these factors of companion planting when planning your garden.
Now, we planted cabbage in this area before. It wasn't in an in-ground growing space. We planted cabbage in some containers. It was like less than 5-gallon pots or containers, and they grew beautifully.
Yes.
They did very, very well. However, we did have some leaves on some of the cabbage heads that were chewed off by those pesky cabbage worms and their parents, the cabbage moths. So we're going to take on companion planting to not only use that space to grow some things in the ground like the beets, which I love, and they hop on the bandwagon with the love of beets. and the celeriac and the radish and lettuce. We're not only going to use that space to just see how those grow in ground, but we're going to plant those different types of plants with the cabbage to see if that deters some of those cabbage worms and the cabbage moths away from that area. Moving on to a plot area that we've had since the beginning. This is like plot number one. We say plot number one because it was the first plot we've had that we grew in ground. So this is about a 12 by 12 foot area where we've kind of split it in half. So the first part of it, we grew sweet potatoes. We've grown sweet potatoes for a couple of years now. 2023, we grew about 30 slips, which my mom and my grandmother thought was a little overboard, but they sure was eating those potatoes.
Yes,
they were
we did.
eating those potatoes up. So in last year, I grew about 44 sweet potato slips, and they did pretty much about the same as it did the previous season. So this year, I'm going to reduce the amount of slips that I plant because no matter how many slips you plant, sweet potatoes, if you let them, they will vine everywhere they go. And there are places on the vine where it will set forth roots and it'll burrow into the ground and form those tubers. So I'm going to reduce the amount, let them vine out some instead of overcrowding them, and just let them grow.
Now, in the back of that plot, we're going to be planting peanuts. We have 3 varieties that we're going to be growing. Virginia jumbo peanuts, a variety called Transkutuku, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. And then y'all already know I had to do it. Tennessee red peanuts. Why? Because we're from Tennessee. So this area we feel is going to be perfect for growing peanuts because traditionally we had corn growing back there. But this area receives full sun, and peanuts, they're a warm season crop that likes full sun and an extended or a long growing season.
Yeah, so we did typically plant corn. The previous seasons, we planted corn back in that area. The corn has what's called brace roots, which are kind of these thick roots at the bottom of it that has loosened the soil in that area as well, which is also beneficial for the peanuts because since they grow underground, they do need a looser soil texture, not super loose, but just a little bit of a looser soil texture so that they can form properly. So we're super excited for this area of peanuts because we love to snack on them. And there's just something about homegrown peanuts when you roast them.
They are delicious, so y'all. Good. I mean, delicious.
And it's cool to watch them grow and harvest them as well. See all those little peanuts underneath the ground.
Next to this plot is plot number 2, where we have a 12 by 6 bed of asparagus growing. We have 3 different varieties: Mary Washington, Jersey Giant, and Purple Passion. We planted it out last year in 2024 with 1-year-old crowns. So we had 1-year-old crowns. They grew all last year, and then we'll let them grow this year and then be able to harvest them in 2026. So very excited. Our family loves asparagus, and I'm sure we'll have way more than we can ever eat. So we'll be probably, I'm sure, giving some away to family and friends, but not going to change anything about this bed. Just excited and to finally be able to get some when that time, to eat some when that time comes.
And having more than you expected is kind of a
good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. And one thing we will say, well, not one thing, but something we will say is that we suggest that you grow some perennial plants. If you have some veggies, they don't have to be asparagus, but any perennial vegetables or fruits or herbs that you can grow in your garden, because they will feed you and your family for years and years and years to come, and you don't have to worry about replanting them every single year.
Absolutely.
So next to that asparagus plot is a new area too. We got a few, y'all. So this is going to be a 10 by 10 foot area. This area is where we would typically plant some cantaloupe on a ladder mesh trellis. Mm-hmm. And this is what my mom built in a previous year.
So as Kira mentioned, it was a ladder mesh trellis, which is typically used for cement paving. But what I did was take that ladder mesh and then zip tied it together to form a little bitty, like a mini arch trellis. And we had, first year I did it, we had a variety of cantaloupe called Minnesota Midget in grow bags, which did very well. Last year I planted them in the ground. And so what I'm going to do is remove that remove that trellis, because it's a nice space, a nice growing space, and we're going to dig in ground and have some things growing.
Yes, so instead of the cantaloupe that we would traditionally or typically grow in that area, we're going to use this in-ground plot for some Swiss chard, some collards, and mustard greens, y'all. We love our leafy greens. So we're going to also do some companion planting in this area, where we're going to plant some onions, some mizuna, which is not necessarily a plant that helps deter any pests or bring any beneficial pollinators there, but it can grow pretty well in between these different types of greens. And we have marigolds. We're going to plant some oregano and also some onions as well. We're just going to plant a few onions just to see how they grow in the ground with plenty of space and plenty of sun.
And I'm not sure if you mentioned it before, but we will be planting dill in that area as well.
Yes, so the herbs and marigolds, the herbs like oregano and dill, and then the flowers like marigolds are great for pest control. So you want to see if that's really true for our area, at least, if it can deter some of those pests from getting our leaves. We really haven't had that many issues in the past with pests eating the chard, collards, or mustard greens, but just in case, since the cabbage is in that area, and cabbage moths can feast on some of those leaves as well. And just testing some things in ground as well. Okay, now next to that in-ground plot area with the leafy greens, we have our melons area. Now, this is also something that we're going to change. It's not necessarily a new addition, it's just a change in what we're doing. So typically we would plant melons in this area that is about 14 by 10 feet. So we would have melons, like watermelons and cantaloupes, in this area in grow bags. And we did it in ground last year as well. But this year we're going to split it a little bit. So it's going to be a 10 by 10 foot instead of 14 by 10 foot area that we'll use for melons. And we're most likely going to do them in grow bags. We're not sure. We're still deciding on that part. But the other part of that area is going to be about 2 by 10 feet. And we're going to use that for kale. So we typically would put kale in the raised beds, and they would do beautifully. They would grow very, very well. But again, like some of our other crops, we want to see how kale grows in ground. From other people's experiences, kale does very well, phenomenal even, when grown in ground like other brassicas. So we want to test that out for ourselves, give it the proper spacing and arrangement, and see how that does and how that does for us. And then we're going to plant a couple marigolds on either side of it, and probably a borage plant next to the melons, so that we have some flowers there to help pollinate those melons in the area.
Okay, across from the melon patch, we have 6 4x2 raised beds that are oval in shape. And so 2 of those they're already taken. They have a variety of strawberries in there called all-star strawberries. And I believe that they are a June bearing strawberry. And then what we're going to do is also plant some more red Malabar spinach. We planted it last year. It did phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So Malabar spinach that were trellised up, red Malabar spinach that were trellised up. We had the strawberries in there, and then we also had some cardinal basil, and it was just so pretty. Beautiful. Those 2 beds were very, very, very pretty. So we're going to keep those beds as is. And then up the trellises, we have 2 72-inch tall trellises. And on a one, we're going to grow the cantaloupes, the variety Minnesota Midget, up one of the trellises. And then we're going to grow delicata up the other trellis. So delicata is a squash variety. Then we have in the center So we have them kind of shaped like a U. And the centers of the 6, we're going to leave those open for right now. And then on the outside, one of those raised beds will be kohlrabi, and then the other will be rutabaga. So not real sure the varieties right now of rutabaga that we're going to be growing, but we did grow some last year and it was really, really good. Mm-hmm. And then kohlrabi, we're going to be growing the early white Vienna and then the purple kohlrabi.
Now, outside of that area, going back to the 8x4 raised beds, we are going to grow some of the greens that are dubbed like Asian greens, like tatsoi, pak choi, and chichi masai, which are very high in lots of vitamins like vitamin C and iron. So want to test out those greens. We've grown them in the past and they were very, very delicious. And we want to incorporate more of them into our regular diet. And then we're also going to grow some celery and carrots on another half of the bed. So half of the bed is going to be for the tatsoi, pak choi, chichi masai, and then the other half is going to be for celery and carrots. So we want them to have more space to grow. In seasons prior, we would kind of pack them in with some other leafy greens and they would get kind of overshadowed and we pull up some leafy greens and we have a little skinny carrots there that did not grow properly. So we want to give them plenty of sun to grow. And we know the celery grows great in raised beds. So we're just going to do that again. And then we have the bed beside it. She's going to get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself.
So we have another 8x4 bed, which is going to be nothing but squash.
Yeah.
So in this bed, so my mom loves squash and she makes, woohoo, y'all, the squash casserole she makes. So we have to grow some, I think we'll grow the straight neck squash. I think she likes that. But then what we're going to do is grow some more delicata. So I have some seeds.
Hold up now. I didn't know about this.
So I purchased some seeds. It's delicata, but it's a different variety called candy stick. So that's gonna go in that bed, I think, or I don't know. It may go in a grow bag. I'm not sure, but this will be a squash bed. So we'll have probably, I think, maybe about 4 squash plants in that bed. And then we'll get it going for the summertime. Probably, squash bugs will get it, and then we'll get some more going.
She put a loop on me. I didn't know about the delicata. Delicata is very, very delicious. It's very, very tasty, very, very sweet. Squash variety, really, really good. So I do understand it. Things change all the time. And we also, I do applaud this decision though. But we're going to also, outside of those 2 beds, we're going to have this is also a new change that we're going to have. We have these little containers, these brown containers. I don't know how long they are.
Not sure. They're
maybe like 2x2.
Yeah, raised beds, rolling raised beds.
Yeah, they're brown containers and we have 6 of them. And we're going to put 2 in the front of each of those 2 beds. And they're going to be nothing but spinach. We want to have space for spinach and grow plenty of it. So we want to incorporate that more into our diet. And we do really enjoy spinach as well, and salads, and then cooked spinach as well. And then we also have these barrels where we just have some herbs. And next to that, we're also going to have another container with spinach. And then it's replicated on the other side of the garden, which we'll show y'all that as well, where we're going to have another container of herbs, which is the container that my grandmother uses, she can pick from, and another little bed beside that for spinach. But going on to the arched trellis.
So the arched trellis, we have, I think, about 3 cattle panels that we have growing space to use. So we enjoy growing vertically because it saves a lot of space. But on this trellis, we're going to grow pole beans again. I think typically we grow Kentucky Wonder pole beans.
Yeah, for the most part.
But we probably, if I'm thinking about adding another a panel and getting some. I don't know. We're still working that out, but I think we may add another panel. But as of right now, we're going to be growing pole beans on the arch trellis, a couple of cherry tomatoes on the arch trellis. We're going to be growing cucumber on the arch trellis, and then honeydew melon as well.
Yeah, so we've grown a lot of those things like cherry tomatoes and the pole beans, and it just looks so beautiful when they hang down through the arch trellis and the sun peeks through. So got to make sure we have that area there as well.
Growing plants vertically is a great way of saving space in the garden. In vertical growing, you grow plants up rather than out, where plants would just sprawl all on the ground. This allows you to use your garden space more efficiently, which is definitely a benefit. But there are other benefits as well, such as the fact that growing vertically allows the leaves of your plants to receive more air circulation, which reduces the chance of disease, especially if you live in a humid climate. Increased fruit production is another benefit. The vast majority of fruits and vegetables are powered by sunlight when growing. Trellising plants allows for increased photosynthesis because more of the plant's leaves are exposed to the sun. This allows the plants to use the sun's energy and convert it to the fuel it needs to grow and increase your harvest. You can also have healthier plants and fruit when growing vertically. Since the plants don't touch the ground, the fruit they produce are not as prone to mold and rot. And then lastly, trellis plants are easier to care for, making tasks like pest control, pruning, and harvesting more accessible as they're in the air and not low to or on the ground. Vining plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, pole beans, and squash make great candidates for vertical growing. Even though people often use traditional trellises when choosing to grow vertically, there are inexpensive ways to do it by using recycled materials. Examples are trellises made from vertical planters, pallets, gutters, ladders, and wire mesh. So, consider growing vertically if you have long vining plants.
And in the bed next to that, we're doing some changes in this bed as well. So in, I think last season and the year before, so the year before in 2023, was it 2023?
2023, it was all peppers, y'all.
Yeah, all peppers, and we kind of packed it in tightly. 2022, we packed it in real tight, and it exceeded our expectations. They grew very well despite there not being any companion plants and them growing very tightly. They grew super tall, way taller than we expected them to, because we tried to grow by height and they just blew up.
They blew up.
And this year we are going to change that around. So it's not gonna be a pepper bed. It is instead going to be where we plant half eggplants, and then the other half we're gonna do onions in there. And so we did say we're gonna plant a few onions in one of those in-ground spaces. That's to test it out. But we're going to plant the rest of them in this area because we have planted some in the raised beds and they did do pretty well. But we want to make sure they get plenty of room and plenty of sun to get hopefully a bigger size of onions, and make sure that they have plenty of sun exposure. And sun exposure is extremely, extremely important in your garden.
And next to that bed is another 8x4 bed. And this bed, will be growing. Half of it will be tomatoes, and then the other half will be peppers. And we had it like this last year as well. So it was tomatoes on one side, and I think it was this? No, last year it was garlic. Half of the bed was garlic, and then the other half was peppers. Mm-hmm. And so this year we're switching it around a little bit because we have the other 8x4 bed full of garlic. So half tomatoes in the back because we're taking the sun exposure into consideration. So the tomatoes will be in the back, so they don't. We don't want to put them in the front because they will be shading out whatever we will be growing in the back. So the back side will be tomatoes, and then the front side will be peppers.
And tomatoes can grow super duper tall, y'all. We didn't know that when we first started planting tomatoes, but when we saw they grew up 8 feet and we started needing to use a ladder to get up there, we took the necessary precautions and make sure we put them in a good space to where they don't crowd out or overshadow everything like they have done in the past.
And then we do have some little barrels. They're shallow that we have, and we're going to be growing lettuce on those. So those, I think we have probably about 6, 7 of them that we have growing on, well, that we'll have lettuce growing in on the patio. And that's just a perfect area for those barrels and for lettuce to be growing, because that area does get afternoon shade. So because what we don't want is our lettuce to be passed out because we planted it in full sun and they are looking at us like, what are you doing? It's too hot. Get us out of this full sun. So we do have those that will be primarily growing lettuce in.
And we also, beside the arch trellis, we do have some vertical planters, some green stalks. And we're going to, I think we're decided on planting some bush beans in there.
Bush beans, and I'm sure some leafy greens will be growing. Arugula, since no one likes it but me.
Yeah.
And some other things that we're still working on what will be growing in the green stalks. So stay tuned as we figure that out.
So that's pretty much all that we're going to add, change, and grow for these 2025 growing seasons.
We hope that y'all found the information in this video helpful as you plan out your 2025 garden.
And be sure to let us know how your garden planning is going. What are you going to add, change, take away, keep the same? And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And as always,
don't forget to
plant to live.
Plant to live, y'all.
See you later.
See ya.